Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Elite Physique University. I'm John Gorman, your host, back once again with Jason Theobald. Jason, what's going on, man? It's a nice July summer day. It's not cold. How are you?
It's definitely not cold. It's hot as hell, but I like it. Not much. It's a regular Thursday for me. Check-ins aren't terrible. I've been to the gym. Did a nice walk outside, sweated my ass off. But all in all, good Thursday. Good Thursday to record.
These are always, when I think about guys like, well, you and I have been friends for a while, man. We both love the summer months. We love being able to wear shorts and a fucking tank top and just relax and enjoy the sun. So, it's right now we're recording. This will drop in a couple weeks because that's kind of the schedule we're on as a reminder to people. Because I have got some messages say, hey, when are you going to drop a new podcast? I said, well, we're dropping them every 2 weeks. I'm getting ready to upload a new one today. So that's just what our schedule will allow. But I was just going to say July is always a good time. We're recording this. It was just after July 4th. My check-ins are down just a little bit this week because I told people on Monday when they checked in, a lot of people didn't check in. So I get that. Do you get that with clients? Like after a holiday weekend, they're just a little slower to check in?
Yeah, a little bit, but my Monday was still pretty full. But I'm sure if you waited, and
Yeah.
they'll check in next week.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't want to look at themselves, didn't want to
Yep.
look at scale, all those things. So yeah, I'm sure there was a few, but I still had a pretty busy Monday, unfortunately.
Well, that kind of leads into a future episode that we're going to do, and it ties into this episode. So, you've made a couple really good posts here on social recently. You talked about our topic today, and that what you do when the diet's over, especially a contest prep. But you also made another good one on, I think it was the 10 things that you're not telling your coach, or the major things you're not. Yeah. So talking about check-ins and not wanting to tell your coach shit. That's going to be a podcast here in the very near future. And you guys should go check out Jason's page, man. You've really made some good posts, and they're good bullet points, and you can learn a lot from them. But we're going to do a deep dive today. We're going to get pretty granular on this because there's 10 things that everybody needs to understand. The diet's over. So now what do I do? And whether you're new or you're advanced, this is all stuff that's going to hit home. Or if you're a coach or trainer, this is definitely something that you need to understand. So before we get in deep to that, man, you sent me a picture today. You're looking pretty good. You're 11 weeks out. So by the time this drops, you'll be 9. How are we looking for you to start your prep?
I think it's coming along good. I wish I had better hunger. I'm just not. My hunger's just not that great, man. Unless I'm doing like 5 hit intervals, like 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And so, I probably was at 3,300 calories to start. I'm starting to bring fats down a little bit, keeping carbs up pretty high. Just see what my body does from there. I'm not going to really pull the trigger until August 1st, but I kind of do this every year. I rev things up. I always stay in striking distance so I can, kind of crank the calories. I grow a little bit, pull the fats a bit, kind of see where my body's settling, and then adjust carbs as I get, 8 weeks out, or like last time it was only 3. So it's kind of how I do things. I'm just not as anal anymore as I used to be. It's a lot more intuitive, but I mean, after 25 years, I think I kind of earned that right.
Yeah, I mean, nobody knows your body better than you do at this point. So just give me the heads up, a couple weeks out, whenever you're ready. And that way you can keep some pretty detailed notes, even though you're doing a lot of stuff intuitive. Keep some detailed notes on kind of your hard transition over to prep. And we'll do an episode on that because I think a lot of people would like to hear that, and they're going to learn a lot from it. So let's go ahead. It is a nice warm day. So I'm going to crack a cold one, a cold monster. What are you drinking on over there? You got tea again?
I actually have nothing, man. I hope there's a little water. Oh, God, my water's even out. I have nothing.
Well, go ahead, go grab something because I'm going to talk for a minute because we do have some notes to talk about. So before we get into this topic today, we do have our next Elite Physique University seminar coming up, and this is going to be all new topics. Jason and I are super, super excited. We did our last one in Tampa, and that was back this spring, and it was really good. And we did our first one. It was fall of last year, and those were kind of similar. They were in 2 different places. One was in Missouri, one was in Tampa. But this next one, we are coming back to Tampa. It's going to be the weekend before Thanksgiving. And the good news is you can attend in person, and anytime you can attend something in person, you always get the most out of it. You meet people, you make connections. We get to talk shop with you. We get to all go train. It's always just more fun to do that stuff in person, but we do have a live stream option available. We've got a great girl named Sammy that was at our event last year. She's going to live stream it. So if you're someone that can't travel, good news is you'll be able to do that. Now, we're not opening up tickets yet because we're still pretty far away, and we're getting everything lined up to where we can announce it on the website and have tickets. So just so you know, and you can start planning early, it's going to be then. And Jason, you're going into some really good deep topics. I don't want to release them now, but it's kind of the next progression on some of the stuff that you've been talking about for the last few years. And my game is definitely going to step up, and it's going to be a progression of the things I've been putting out at seminars. So you guys stay tuned, and you'll see what that's all about. All right, man, you got some water? You ready to roll?
Ready to roll.
All right, so here we go. So these are the 10 things really listed, and there's more than this, but the diet's over. Now what? And I think, man, this can apply to especially contest prep, because there's nothing harder on a natural or assisted athlete. We're going to talk about both sides of this. But, there are a lot of times that these things can apply to Gen Pop dieters that have dieted a long time or come out of stressful events. Kind of touch on that if you would, because we understand contest prep is definitely hard. But talk about how this could also apply to Gen Pop or over dieted people in general.
I mean, when, just because someone's not getting ready for a show doesn't mean they don't put effort into the diet. And,
right.
There's a lot of situations still out there with, I don't want to say it like bad coaching, but maybe situations where they're pushed too hard, calories are too low, not enough refeeds, maybe a diet break was needed. So none of those situations are happening. And so even though they're not getting ready for stage, they were pushed to a very low caloric situation. And so that's going to set up the same situations as if someone was being pushed for stage. Maybe you started at 50% body fat and got to 20. So you just aren't to that point yet, but that took a big toll. So really these kind of apply to anyone who's just been through a really hard diet phase, or even, maybe yo-yo dieted as well.
Yeah, it definitely can apply. So I've got these all listed here. Do you have your show notes pulled up, or do you just want me to read these off and you can
just
go
read
into
them off.
Okay.
I don't have it pulled up.
Okay. Number one, post show is a health phase for male and females, assuming that the season's over. It usually lasts 8 weeks to 6 months. So talk about that when you say health. You said health in all caps. A lot of people don't realize after a diet's over that health is the number one priority. Most people are immediately thinking, fuck, I need to go train and gain muscle and do all this. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, I mean, for both sexes, it means to kind of restore hormones, get sleep back to normal. If there's any digestion problems, restore that. Really, it's just a pullback time. Pull back on your training. Cardio should be lowered. And if it was really high, maybe it's done in stages. I'm not saying you go from 2 hours a day to 20 minutes a couple times a week, but you start pulling back. And you pull back with health as, the marker. For women, I want to see a period restored, things of that nature. Men, we want to see testosterone eventually come back, things like that are going to be down. Thyroid hormones a lot of times going to be down as well. So, we just kind of want to restore health. And if you're someone that doesn't look at labs, okay. But for women, get a period back. For men, you should have a, fairly good, recovery, sleeping well, all those things. So it's just a focus that needs to be in the thought of your mind rather than, all right, now it's push again.
Yeah. And, we've talked about this in prior episodes in the archives. We talked about what labs are, what you should look at, what you should get, what they mean. I work with a lot of natural athletes. You work with natural and assisted athletes. For most of mine, I tell them, listen, don't get your labs done right after your show's over, right after a hard diet phase is over, because they're going to be in the shitter. That's part of it. I tell them to wait, generally 4 months is a pretty good time for just on average. But it's different depending. So what do you like to recommend people wait post show for men and women, assisted and natural? I know there's a lot to unpack there.
So let's see, assisted, because there could have been ongoing issues with, say, cholesterol and liver enzymes. I like to go about 8 weeks and see if there's anything that, we need to go ahead and kind of supplement the body with to clear out and clean out. At that point, I'm not saying every hormone is going to be back, but I do kind of want to address anything that's lingering from PEDS use. You can go a little longer with, natural athletes. Usually it's going to take 3 months for, complete new red blood cells to generate. So, I mean, you could try 8 weeks if they don't mind spending the money, but everything's not going to be back in range yet by any means. And, you know, if PEDs weren't used, hopefully cholesterol's not an issue. Liver really shouldn't be stressed, things of that nature, kidney. So, you know, hormones are going to still be down. So you can wait a little longer for them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's generally what I recommend. Point number 2 that you want to talk about: raise your calories as fast as you can within reason. The points to bring hormone backs to homeostasis. This bump differs for everyone. Try to find a hunger score of 5 of 10 to start. So kind of break that down for us.
Well, you know, I think maybe 5 years ago, maybe a little further back, you know, what was going on was a slow reverse out of prep.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never been a huge fan of that. I mean, I've been on message boards going back to 2009, 2010, saying, you know, you should bump a little harder and get, you know, work on getting hormones reset, getting, you know, sleep back, cortisol down, all those things. So what I'm saying there is make a bump that's enough that you can start actually healing. Don't just add 10 to 15 carbs and think that's going to do anything. It's just going to make you hungry and pissed off, and it's not going to be sustainable. So make a bump that, you know, kind of takes your hunger to like a 5, maybe somewhere around there. Cause you don't want to put so much in that now they're not hungry at all, cause they're going to gain fat fast. But what I mean by being different for everyone, like there's ectomorphs like me who can almost go back to 3,000 calories and stay pretty lean and do really well. You've got mesos and endos who you might need to take a little slower progression with. I can't really tell you what's right for either you as yourself or is, you know, what your coach should be doing with you. But, you know, maybe a 30 to 40 carb bump for women, a 50 carb bump for men, and go from there and just see how things are shaking out. I just don't want to see people taking too much time with the goal of staying super ripped, because hormones aren't returning. And eventually that's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, there's a couple of caveats I'll throw in there too. We did a complete reverse dieting and metabolic capacity episode, and that's the book I wrote in 2015. And in that book, I advocate for a slower reverse, but under one condition: if you're eating a bunch of food off the plan, you still need to try and get your daily calories up. So I recommended, hey, maybe if you're a female, you add 15 carbs a week. If you're adding food on your own, you can't stop cheating on the diet, because it's very common. A lot of people don't understand what's going to happen after their first show. Like, they're going to eat off plan. And if you're already gaining from that, maybe you don't need to add yet. But if you somewhat have it under control and a couple times a week you're eating off plan, well, then you can't add as many calories. But once you've done this for a while and you get this under control, you can reverse a lot faster. Like you were saying, I had a bikini girl that just got done competing this weekend, had a pretty good season. She placed second in a couple of her classes, and I had her down to like 60 carbs. It's the very end, the very, very end of the diet, obviously. And she's doing quite a bit of cardio, and I cut that way back, but I jumped her up from 60 carbs up to like, it was like 125. But I told her, and she's done this before, she's okay. And we ramped her up pretty fast. And I said, the goal is to get you healthy again pretty fast. I was like, but if you start eating off the plan a lot, I need to know, because, you know, I'm not going to add as many calories after that. So that to me is kind of a caveat, but that kind of goes into our next point, Jason. Number 3 was, do not binge eat, because you'll not be in a spot to get the fat off. And if you do, don't beat yourself up, just move on and get on a program. Probably one of the most important points that, you know, we've talked about this stuff for a decade, right? One of the most important points that people need to understand: talk about what happens when you binge eat after a hard diet, and then the fat's not going to come off, because that's the part that gets people.
So what a lot of competitors do, and I'm not saying all newbies or even, you know, the first few year competitors, not all of them do this, but many stockpile all the things they want to eat in their bag that day. Yep. And then they get this huge list of shit that they want everyone to make: cookies, ice creams, cakes, you know, and all they start doing is they're saying, oh, well, I dieted hard for 16 weeks. I deserve this. Well, okay, fine, if that's really what you think. But it snowballs a lot of times into continuing, because that craving for that sugar becomes an addiction. So first and foremost, don't stockpile a shit ton of food. Stockpile some water and some Gator in your bag, hydrate after, and then go have a nice meal with someone, maybe some cake, and then leave all that shit not in the room, and just, work back off of a plan. But what happens when you do that and you do it continuously, not only does it become an addiction to sugar, but you just dieted. And if anyone tells you your metabolism is zooming, that's completely false.
Right.
Your thyroid is down regulated many times as your body weight has fallen. That's what it does. You can take things like ThyroBoost and from my company, New Ethics, to kind of counteract that. But at the same time, you're going to have some down regulation. So if you keep binging and doing all this, you're going to have a small window, maybe of 2 weeks if you did it hard, where you're not going to gain a ton of fat. But then after that, you're going to lose sensitivity. It's going to pile on. What you're trying to do post-show, if you're really serious about competing, is prolong the insulin sensitivity period that you've created from the diet so that you can build muscle like crazy. But if you do all this binging, you're blowing it. You're blowing all that out the water. And then at the same time, your metabolism hasn't recovered. So you can't look at your coach, or if you're doing your shit yourself. And now what happens is they start yo-yo dieting. Oh God, I did all this for 2 weeks. Now I'm going to diet hard for a week. They don't really see any change. They go out with friends. They eat a shit ton of pizza and cake and ice cream and all this shit. Then they get back on their diet for a few days. They don't really see anything. They're depressed. They do it again and again. So now they're in this cycle where they starve themselves all week and then binge all weekend, and it's a bad cycle. And I see it all the time. So yeah, that's why if you do that post show, by all means, don't beat yourself up for it, but get back on a plan sooner than later, or else that sugar addiction is going to really kick you in the ass for the next 4, 5, 6. It could go on for a while.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like I'll have a client do that every once in a while. It's not as bad as it used to be, man. It seemed like back when I coached prior to 2014, I had a lot of that. I don't know if I just have more serious people, but I still have a lot of newbies. We just don't see as much of that. It used to be.
Food.
Yeah. I don't see as much of it, and I don't have people gaining 20 pounds in 2 weeks and then, it doesn't come off. But, one little tip I think we can give people, and this is what I have my athletes do. If they do go ahead and they just go off the rails, for most of the week, right? And they gain, whatever, say it's 8, 9 pounds. I tell them, they're like, hey, what do you want me to do to get this off? I'm like, first of all, I want you to nail your macros that I gave you, nail them to a T for 4 or 5 days, up your water a couple liters a day. Let's flush some of the bloat off. Let's get your digestion under control. Just eat your normal macros, and let's see where your baseline is. And then I just start them from there. But I don't drop their calories. I don't do any of that. I just give them a set macros to just stick to, just so they're not eating off the plan. And then, a lot of people don't realize is when you do up water, you can flush some bloat for a few days. And yeah, you can take natural diuretic. You can do things like that. But I just like to use water. It gives them something to focus on, and it helps flush that bloat. Was there anything that you want to add to that?
No, I think we covered it.
Yeah, I think that's just pretty sound advice. Number 4, and this flies kind of in the face of what a lot of people think, what I used to think as well. Number 4 is reduce training volume and frequency so you relieve body stress, let your joints and ligaments recover, along with lowering inflammation. Most people, man, as we know, and this was me back in the day, they're immediately right back into hard training, getting that food up, immediately focusing on, and I guess we could talk about this later, muscle gain versus restoring lost muscle, but talk about reducing training volume and frequency. It kind of goes against what most people think.
Well, listen, there are some bodies, mainly men on performance enhancing drugs, and mainly men that are ectomorphs that can push a little bit after the show. So yeah. I'm not saying there is not a time and place for people that can push, but if we're talking to natural men, natural women, even women on PEDs, because they need to get off of it because they're already been experienced to an androgen for a long time, and they really need to get that out of their system. So their hormones are going to fall too. So that whole group right there really should be on 4 days of training, nothing to failure. And if they were doing, 4 sets per body part, pull it back to 3. So we've lowered frequency and intensity, volume, and intensity, because we're not taking anything to failure. The whole thing for that is to restore health and get them back to homeostasis with hormones, restoring periods, restoring health as fast as we can. And also giving the joints a break. I mean, you've been training and probably pounding cardio, so the whole body just needs a break. And, think about it. Every athlete has an off season, right? I mean, Tom Brady goes into an off season. Bodybuilders, for some reason, think that, there's no time to kind of rest. And that's just certainly not the case, especially after you just trained and ate in a caloric deficit for 16 weeks and sometimes even longer. I know you have some of your athletes who do 24. At any point, the point is that it's time to focus on health at that point, and pushing training harder is really just going to keep that body inflamed, continually potential to push you into a parasympathetic, sympathetic dominant state, which can then wreak havoc continually on the hormones as well. So that's really it. And then even that select few that you might push after the show with maybe 500 mgs a test or whatever only, they're still going to need to take a health phase after that 6-week push. It's just there might be those select few that can do that.
Yeah, and that generally seems to be folks that stay a little bit leaner. They don't have a long, harsh prep versus, if you've got a natty that might be kind of a fatty, I know that rhymes, then the longer you diet, and if you're natural, the more that becomes very, very important. And a lot of people don't understand. Sometimes in this sport, you have to it's not really a step back, but I guess you could look at it this way. You have to take a step back to be able to take 2 or 3 steps forward. Yeah. Because if you don't take that step back, it's going to inhibit your growth. It's going to get in the way of growth, and you're just going to stay really overreached. I mean, prep is just one giant fucking overreach. Well, in the off season, my athletes are doing overreaching and they're doing deloads to give their body a break. If you're going to do the biggest fucking overreach of your life in a contest prep, why the hell would you not pull back some? So, it makes complete sense. And I hope people kind of open up their eyes to that a little bit. And think about that, because I know a lot of people just didn't learn that. Let's talk about number 5, reduce cardio, especially in a HIIT interval training. You like to drop them completely, aim for a spot of maybe 2 medium intensity steady state sessions at 30 minutes a week, maybe 120, heartbeat rate a minute, and just eat more and just get heart health in. So talk about what you like to do with cardio.
So I like to reduce it. Like I said, earlier in the episode, I don't take it, 2 hours down to 20 minutes, 2 times a week right away. Let's say, it's hard to say because everyone's going to be on different amounts of cardio, but your first move should be to reduce it. And I drop hits. Now if someone's on like 4, 5 or 7, 8 minute or, hit intervals, I might cut that in half and then cut it down to 1 and then pull it. But my goal is to get that out, let the body rest, get out of that more sympathetic dominant type cardio situation, basically. And I'll even pull back, if I had them doing miss for a while, 140 beats per minute or something, I'll even pull that down to 120 and then start working that cardio back. The goal is to just kind of get it to that walking cardio with beat heart rate, maybe 120 beats per minute, 110 beats per minute for heart health, and to keep them a little leaner. But just kind of got to pull that back. I don't believe in keeping it high so that you can cheat more on your diet and things of that nature. That's just going to give you that false sense of, oh, I can do this, but then at the same time, now I got to pay the piper. Well, I just ate some cake and I only done 20 minutes cardio a day. Now I got to do 40. And then that gets into one of those situations where you've got people eating what they want and then immediately got to find a treadmill and walk it off for an hour. Like, people get into that situation too. And that's also disordered eating. So I try to just work the cardio back slowly and get it down to like 2 sessions, maybe 30 minutes a week.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I know during peak week, if someone's doing a show, I like to drop all of it for, 3, 4, 5 days, depending on the person, let cortisol drop. And a lot of the times I'll just leave it completely out. Like if they're doing okay. But yeah, I might toss a little bit in. I usually keep one hit in, 3 to 5 intervals on their high carb day, just to help create some insulin sensitivity. But, maybe they go do five hit on the rope for 15 seconds each. And I don't get them higher ever in the off season, but I'm right there with you on all of that. Number 6, prioritize extra sleep and rest. Fucking sleep, man. That's the number one thing I struggle with getting my clients to actually buy into, because it's not sexy. Where are you at on that with getting your clients to buy into extra sleep and rest?
Well, I think most of my clients get it. I have a lot of clients working with hormonal issues, and, I pound it in their head, we got to fix this. And, I think they get it and they track it and let me know when they're doing better. But when you come to someone from coming out of prep or even a hard diet, a lot of times sleep kind of went by the wayside, just because either maybe the performance enhancing drugs they're taking, or because they are going more sympathetic dominance, the cortisol is rising and they're struggling. And so, a lot of times I'll see people go from 7 to 8 in the off season to 5 or 6 during prep. And so, once we get back out of that situation, we want to get the body calmer. We want to get the, parasympathetic kicking in, which is rest and digest. And so we want to track to see that we're getting back to 7 to 8 hours a week.
Yeah. It's one of those things. For the most part, my clients are good with it, but I have had probably half a dozen this year that they just cannot fucking sleep. And finally, the only thing I could find to help them sleep, well, I didn't find it, but I had them go talk to their doctor, was to take fucking gummies, man. Like literally it was the only thing that would get them to actually sleep. And as soon as they started doing that, they dropped 3 or 4 pounds in about 4 weeks. And it would all be from a cortisol dump and, improved insulin sensitivity from sleep. All that stuff would improve. And their training would get better. Their physique looked better. They felt better. But man, some people just have a really hard time. And I really think at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things. Maybe we can talk about it on this thing, things you don't tell your coaches. But one of the things I know my clients are doing, because I'll see them fucking posting shit on stories at 3 a.m. sometimes here and there, they don't get off their fucking phone. Like they don't get off of it. And they're like, well, I can't sleep. I'm like, yeah, because you're on your fucking phone. Like that's just going to wake you up more.
The nights that for me, I use our cortisol a lot. I use our relax a lot to get people extra sleep, and it works and helps. But even then, when you're deep in contest prep, sometimes it's just hard.
Part of it.
Yeah. But even myself, if I'm screwing around with social media, sometimes at night I'll sit on the couch and I got to make a post or just feel like it's time to make a post. If I'm screwing around with it till 11:15, I don't usually get as good a night's sleep.
Yeah.
I get better night's sleep, it seems like, on the nights where I put the phone down at 8, maybe watch a little TV, and then get to bed. So I agree with you. That's a big culprit. You can wear blue light glasses. I've never really got into it, I'll be honest. But as I've gotten older, I feel like maybe I could benefit from them. I know when I was in my 30s and I was coaching then, I'd be on my phone till whenever, and I slept like a baby. But in my 40s, I don't sleep quite as well as I once did.
Yeah, I tell you what, our good friend Lauren Conlon, her and Ryan live down in Tampa. If we went to hang out with them, because I have numerous times, it passed like 6 or 7 o'clock. They're both walking around with these big ass glasses on because they literally take it that serious, and people laugh. I don't give a shit. Like they're maximizing their sleep. Like it's important to them. But I haven't dug into that either. I'll admit. All right, man, we've got, looks like 4 more.
Yep.
The next one, we're going to talk about PEDs a little bit more. If you're on performance enhancing drugs and a male, you need to cruise on 200 mgs of test per week or a PCT. So there's more to go on that. Let's go ahead and talk about that, transitioning off and kind of an HRT dose, if you will, or a PCT, kind of break that down for a male.
Well, I mean, if you're not a national level guy or going for, trying to get a pro card, I think your best bet post show is to focus on health. And if you're a guy who's, made the decision that you don't want to yo-yo the hormones and you're going to do TRT for a lot of the year and then hit some cycles, go back to your HRT dose, get off all the cutters, the trends, the Winstrels, the Masterons, get all that shit out of your system, all the hard shit, and just get on 150 to 200 megs of test a week and clear out, give it 8 weeks and then take your labs and see, did my liver enzymes come back down? Did my, cholesterol clear up? And if not, that's when you can hit your support subs and then retest. And a lot of times I don't even have them hit any cycle until we retest and get a positive response from the support subs. Or you PCT, if you're a younger guy, and you're under 20, you're under 30 and you want to have kids and, you want to bounce back and try to get your restore, then come off and run your PCT. We could do a whole episode on that. It's a lot that goes into a PCT, and I don't think we have time for all that, but right. Run your PCT. So in select cases, like I said, there's certain guys that are more serious about it, and maybe they want to, they had an easy prep, or they didn't have to prep that long, or they weren't on the cutting drugs that long, and so they want to run 500-600 mgs of just test for 6 weeks post show and really push their calories fast and up. And a lot of times you can do that more with the guys who stay leaner easier. and get that rebound and catch that rebound. But even at 200, if you use food as your anabolic and really just get the food up, you'll still make some really good gains. Just keep the crap out and maximize your insulin sensitivity. So that's kind of that aspect of that question.
Yeah, I usually see, especially guys that have been on a long time too. You can come back to that. Man, whenever you get them to lower and that androgen receptor starts depression back up, and they are going to cruise on like a 200. I've had a lot of guys come to me that, man, they were just taking so much for so long, and honestly, it's black market, so they don't know exactly what they're getting, but weren't really looking at labs. Body just looked kind of bloated and didn't look as good as it should. Man, whenever I get them to pull back and just go for 8 to 12 weeks and then retest and look at labs, their body cleaned up a lot. And then when they go back on, their response so much better from it, just from letting everything clean back out. And then you can start to add things back in. And you're right. I think we should do a whole episode on that. And I think maybe we should do a PCT episode, and then also had a transition from, a blast to a cruise to a blast. And I think that would probably be beneficial for people to understand to do the right way. Because here's the thing. Some people are, listen, if you're natty, well, then don't fucking listen. But there's people out there that need to understand they're going to do it anyway. So why not give them the information so they fucking at least do it right and they can at least take care of their health? Let's talk about females. So females on PEDs, remove them immediately and run a female PCT, like, the new ethics jump start for 6 to 8 weeks to restore homeostasis. Talk about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not that a woman couldn't stay on for 6 weeks and get the benefit. It's just their body's already probably been subjected for 16 to 12 weeks to androgens. And, at that point, you should really just get that out of there. Get the period restored if they are still, premenopausal. I used to run a whole, slew of supplements for female PCT. I was one of the only coaches I felt like that was doing it. And it just didn't make sense why no one was trying to bring females cycle back immediately. Why wasn't anyone trying to bring their testosterone back? A lot of coaches would tell them, oh, you don't need to worry about that. You're a female. Well, that's crazy.
Right.
So, now it morphed into, once I shared that with Vince, he kind of tweaked it and it morphed into Jumpstart. So I use Jumpstart now post cycle with my females, 4 caps 2 times a day. And then just rest them, feed up, everything that we've talked about already, and kind of restore that period, and then take a look at labs again and see where we might be off and what's going on. So that's kind of how I treat, women on PEDs.
Yeah. I think a lot of coaches, including me back in the day, way back when, before I kind of understand how the systems of the body work, they just didn't fucking know. So that was their answer. Like, they really didn't know how to restore their natural levels. And I don't know, you probably didn't either in 2012 or 13, I'm guessing, but once you probably had a good idea and you thought it was important to restore and do some kind of a PCT where people just didn't do shit. And then you just let a female go that's been on androgens for a while, and then all their systems crash and their body wants to gain fat back anyway. And it's this really cascade of kind of a post-show rebound anyway. And then the drop in androgens. Yeah. So a question for you, kind of a sidebar here. For females that you do see, and by the way, this doesn't just mean female bodybuilding. Like, there's women's physique, there's figure, there's a lot of PEDs out there, right? And there's women that take it to get to the level they want to get to. How often are you seeing women come to you that have run more than 2 or 3 cycles that eventually just do need to go on an HRT just to support their testosterone levels? I see it pretty commonly. What about you?
I see it a lot.
Yeah.
I see it a lot. It generally seems to be as they age and get a little older. But that's like anything, that's what happens to men too, but I do feel like actually women's testosterone bounces back a little better than men's. I see most men, if you're past 28 and you've ran a few cycles, I just don't see it getting much higher than 300 or 400. If you can get that back, you're lucky. But women, you only need to be within, 2 to 45 to be in range. I see a lot of them get back to 22s, 23s. You're not optimal, but you're mid-range.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I see women's come back a lot more after VAR. Maybe it's just because all they do, a lot of them is VAR, and VAR is not as hard on the system like what a lot of these other guys are doing. But yeah, I mean, at some point, it's a potential scenario, just like it is for a male, that they may need.
Yeah, and I don't want to punch anybody in the face here with this, but if we do have any listeners here that are looking down on the stuff we're talking about, I can tell you right now, I see a fuck ton of natural females that compete too often that end up on HRT, and they're not taking shit. So listen, you're all putting yourself into a spot to where you really need to take a look at labs. So don't think because we're talking about a female that's been on PEDs might end up on HRT. I've got a lot of females that I work with that they've dieted too much, or that's just the life they've chosen to do shows every couple of years. And eventually their test levels just get to the point where it's just not optimal and they do end up on HRT. So, there's all kinds of different avenues that this stuff kind of intersects here. Let's talk about number 9 here. And men, don't run from this, because if you're a coach, this is something you need to understand. Females should emphasize restoring their cycle. Don't stay so lean that it never comes back, then diet again. And there is one exemption, and we can talk about that, but talk about restoring the cycle and not staying so lean that it never comes back.
So, I mean, I don't know, was it like 2018? You could Google it. Fuck, I forget. But not too long ago, a woman's period was added to one of the 5 pillars of women's health.
Yeah.
The medical community talks about. So, if you're staying so lean because you hate your period, I mean, I guess I get it. I guess I can't totally fully understand it, but that's just not healthy for a female system and body. That means progesterone's too low, most likely, because you need that to ovulate, and that's usually the problem. And therefore now you're relatively estrogen dominant, so you're going to have more mood swings, a little more anxiety, most likely. Maybe you're lucky when it doesn't. But in any event, you're going to have a suppressed hormonal system, and that can eventually lead to testosterone being lower, which then can eventually lead to thyroid being lower. So a period is a sign of well-balanced hormones in women. Generally speaking, I mean, obviously you can have crampy ones and ones that are irregular, but that's still because progesterone usually is still too low, and they're more estrogen dominant when that's happening. There's ways to fix that with chasteberry and things, but my point is, restoring a period is a good first step in showing that a female is on the right direction to health.
Yeah, and you brought up chasteberry. Your chasteberry liposomal, I carry that on my site. Yep. I tell all my females, I'm like, listen, you got to get progesterone back to a healthy spot, and there's nothing better than taking that. And you had told me at one point, for somebody that's really, really bad, 3 droppers, take 3 droppers.
Yeah. 3 to 4, sometimes 6 a day to get that. Yeah. But it's helping that conversation between the ovaries and the brain. Right. It's helping retool that, just like in men. What HCG, chasteberry is kind of what HCG is to men. So it restores that talk that can be basically shut down from stress or PEDS use, and all those things that happen in a prep or a hard diet if you're gym pop.
Yeah, and I'm freestyling here. I'm pretty good with numbers, but I think it's only $23.99 on your site. So I mean, it's one of the most affordable products that you can get for a female that should be in your supplement cabinet, in my opinion. Just go add that. Now, you do have an exemption here. Those running PEDS year round can get away with this, but you didn't say it was healthy. So just kind of talk about that. Right.
Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're already on HRT, that's healthy. But if you're a woman who's already on HRT and you're in and out of VAR every 8 weeks, or in and out of Primo, you're every 8 weeks, your hormones are kind of supported. If you've made that decision and you don't want your period and you're going to support hormones and run cycles, then that's fine. You're at least not going to have those hormonal crashes. So that's all I was saying, is that, if someone has their testosterone already supported and they're running cycles every 8 weeks, or, that's how I do my women: 8 weeks on, 8 weeks off, restore, move on, do it again. I don't like to expose them to androgens too long for one straight phase. But anyways, that's kind of why I put that exemption there.
Yeah. Okay. And finally, we've got number 10. And honestly, we've gone pretty granular on all of these with supplementation and training and diet and, all that stuff on how to kind of navigate this. Man, I think this is probably the best one and probably the most important one. And I don't want people to just kind of shy away from this, because this is the end of the episode, because this is a lifestyle that we all choose. And if you really want this to stick, I really like that you put this in there, and you put it in there last after everybody read the sexy shit, right? You put this one in there, and you said, reconnect with friends and family, go to dinner. You can go out and eat tasty and healthy. don't remain a hermit. Talk about first, before you talk about going out, talk about becoming a hermit, because I do have some clients myself where sometimes they'll put themselves into situations where they're traveling when they don't, like 6 weeks out. They're traveling when they don't need to be. They're sleeping in a hotel. I need them to get sleep. They're stressed out because they're at fucking barbecues and birthday parties. And sometimes I tell them, say, hey, maybe for the last month, it's probably better off if you just kind of stay in, because it keeps them chill and they can stay on their plan better. But talk about becoming a hermit, man, because that's a real thing.
Well, you know, early in my bodybuilding career, I was guilty of this. And I think a lot of people are, and you don't really know how to navigate the waters, and you just know it's a lot easier to have that damn kitchen close to you, and you don't have to fuck around with socializing and putting a fake smile on and all the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't always work for life. But my point is, a lot of people will probably take that approach to prep. And I think that a lot of people need that to be successful. I'm not saying it's the right way. I'm just saying it's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
I know people who live it like that in the off season too, and I don't think that's healthy. But that's the way they do it. So my point is, once you're done with the show, it's not an all or nothing. Like, oh God, we're going out to a restaurant, I got to eat shitty. No, you don't. Like, you can go to a restaurant and get freaking cod and rice and get a salad. Like, I do that shit all the time. Like, I don't even consider it a cheat meal. Like, half times weeks go by, I really don't have what people would consider a cheat meal. I go out to dinner with my kids, but I'm getting like salmon and couscous, or like. Yeah. So, I'm kind of on prep now, right? But I got my sons coming this weekend, and I'm going to take them to dinner, and I'm going to just make the best choices I can. And maybe the last 4 weeks, I'll pack meals if I have to, if I'm not going to look ready. But, my point is this, you're going to miss out on some things no matter what in prep. You just are. And so once that's over, I want people to kind of get back out there and not be like, oh God, because you kind of get into prep mode, and I've been in there too, where you're post show now, and you want to stay looking good, and you fear that if you eat out or you go to this or you go do that, it's all going to crumble. And that's a very real thing too. You got the people that go the opposite direction on the binging, and then you got people that go the other direction where they won't bend and break at all. So I was just reminding people that, hey, get back out there. Your family, your loved ones probably gave you some leeway, so just go and pick healthy food and enjoy life.
Yeah. I agree, man. And you bring up a good point. Sometimes it is easier just to kind of shut yourself in. If I were ever going to prep, and I never will, but if I were ever going to prep again, I'm sitting here looking around my house. I've got my home gym right there. You guys can't see listening to the podcast. I've got a fucking pool table right in front of me, and we all know I love to play pool. I've got a kitchen. Man, I could just shut myself off from the world. We could do this podcast and I could never see anybody. I could probably get through it, because the hardest thing for me is I just don't really want to be around people. I do when I'm normal. I love being around people. But when I get tired and cranky, I just don't want to fucking be around anybody. And that's not reality. So then here's the point I want to bring up. You talked about people fear after the show's over, like you go out and you're worried about going off the deep end. You're worried about. That's how you learn how to deal with it, though. You have to learn how to deal with that, because you can't run from it, because it's a very real reality. So I really like that you put this last point was in there, because it's the most important. This is what I know you want for everybody. This is what I want for everybody listening. We want you guys to be able to enjoy this lifestyle. It's a very hard lifestyle that we've chosen. I think this is the hardest sport in the world. I really, really do, because anytime you involve diet and hunger, because you have to eat to survive. To me, it really is. It's the hardest sport that there is. So we want people to be able to navigate through it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, man. Do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you want to add? This was your post, by the way. This was really well done.
I think that people need to give themselves a little grace. I hope they don't think I'm saying, don't cheat, don't enjoy some foods. I'm just trying to give them some ways to make good progress after and still kind of, enjoy life. So I hope that it was obviously clear that, I'm not saying don't have fun, don't get back out. That's why I kind of ended that post that way.
Yeah.
Because I did talk about the binge eating, saying don't get that in that trap. But, I think that post show, a lot of people aren't ready for the hunger. They're not ready for the fact that there's no pressure on them anymore to be in their underwear in front of 2,000 people, and they crumble. So, it might be a good time too for a lot of people to learn to track macros and get off that strict diet plan if you chose that with your coach, and kind of get flexible again as well. I didn't cover that in my post, but I think that's a great way for a lot of people to probably transition off of a strict diet and or out of prep.
Yeah. Okay. A couple things to end the show on. If you guys ever need to get hold of us, click the show notes. We've got both of our emails there. You've got links to both of our companies. Anything that you need, you ever want to hear different people on the show, send a question in, different topics. It doesn't matter. I'm going to try and get Red Ass Jason Theobald to make an appearance on the next show. I like to have fun with Jason. Maybe we can get Red Ass Jason to show up. We're going to talk about the things that you do that you don't tell your coach that you should. And I really think that'll be a fun one. That was another post that you made. So we'll get pretty granular on that one. I might add some things because I think you did 5. Yeah. I think if we do this in a podcast, we can probably get to 5 or 10 pretty easy. Sure. And I'll probably add some in to kind of poke fun at you because I know there were some things I did when you coached me that caused Red Ass Jason to show up on my Facebook page. So it might involve a couple cans of pumpkin or 6. So we'll talk about that stuff. So for myself and Jason, you guys enjoy your July. We're out of here. See you guys.
Yeah.